The golden age of piracy is back, and it's all thanks to Donald Trump, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, and maybe even Donald Trump Jr. And it's going to potentially not only bring back the American empire in full force after 4 years of decline, but it could be used to entirely crush the Mexican drug cartels. But let's go over what this is. See, I made a video almost exactly a year ago today about how piracy could be an answer to our foreign policy crumbling over the decades. All piracy is, at least formally, was actually strategy the British Empire used to ensure that they were the dominant power in the world. Piracy is actually one of the reasons that the British became as powerful as they were. Of course, it wasn't actually called piracy because piracy was technically illegal. These were commanders of free ships. They were privateers. And what happened was the monarchs in England gave letters of marque to adventurous sailors who essentially wanted to go out, explore, and take treasure. And these letters of marque were more often than not used as a form of undeclared warfare. The English would issue letters of marque for people like Sir Francis Drake or Captain Henry Morgan, who would then go on and secure their vengeful vendettas, specifically against, at the time, the Spanish Empire. And all of this took place in South America and the Caribbean, and these privateers would be rewarded for their efforts on behalf of the British Empire by being able to take some of the treasure that they were able to abscond with from the Spanish. This exact strategy almost infused a capitalistic mindset within the British Empire. It was kind of a precursor to the East India Trading Company, which is also one of the reasons why the British became so powerful. It gives your citizens incentives to do your foreign policy for you. And certainly it solves a bunch of problems because let's say you have a high youth unemployment. Say these people don't want to join the military. Say they want independence, but they want to go on an adventure. A lot of these people in the British Empire and even in the Spanish Empire at the time were 20 to 30 years old, were young, and this was their form of military. And it's kind of funny because the United States military is currently undergoing a recruitment problem, which no doubt was due to the Biden administration. So I'm sure that problem will figure itself out during the Trump administration and the cultural shift. But all that to say that privateering, which the US government can legally do, can issue letters of marque, which is what privateering involves, is essentially a letter stating if you are a private citizen and you would like to do the bidding of the United States government, you're allowed to do so. If you want to go hunt down cartels with a band of buddies of 5 to 10 guys, you can do so officially on behalf of the US government. You just have to get this letter of marque. This opens up essentially for mercenary organizations, the most famous one being run by Erik Prince, being Blackwater, to go and do foreign policy bidding for the United States in places like Mexico. And it's useful because you don't necessarily have the red tape of government regulation. That's why we had so many mercenaries in Iraq and Afghanistan, for example, because for the longest time, the formal US military was bound by certain rules of engagement, but mercenaries don't have those same laws and the same reporting requirements. It was actually kind of dark, and I'm not necessarily endorsing this because some of the things they did to civilians I think was reprehensible, but if you're going into a war zone, bad stuff is going to happen. And if your enemy is, say, the Mexican drug cartels, who are literally murdering civilians and causing chaos, not just in Mexico, but in the United States, well, maybe it's time that America starts fighting fire with fire. So the idea of issuing letters of marque is incredibly useful and strategic because America is also the most armed nation in the world. And so allowing people in America who just have AR-15s, probably AK-47s and all these guns and whatnots, for all I know they have tanks and Humvees. If it's a formal mercenary organization, they're actually allowed, who knows, they could even probably get like a battleship or something, which I think would be awesome because then you actually have real piracy, not just stuff going on land, right? Like real privateering, which is a great way to decommission a ship, by the way. Instead of just using it for scrap metal, just allow civilians to buy it and then go roam the seas for national security purposes. Maybe that would be an answer to what's going on in around Greenland, where you have Chinese and Russian ships constantly invading US sovereignty. Maybe that's an answer, privateering for that. But the fields of influence are unlimited. And this is something that could actually happen because the US government only has so many resources, even militarily, that we can focus on. We can focus on big picture things, but the innovation that happens with the personal incentives that people can bring from, I don't know, getting a cut of the money that they receive from, getting rid of cartel members. Like imagine a cartel member sitting on $1 billion worth of cash. What happens if the US government goes and kills that cartel member and takes the cash? There's rules and regulations around what the US government can do as far as that cash is concerned. But if it's a privateer, maybe they get 50%. 50% of $1 billion is pretty sweet. So I love how the Trump administration is looking into this seriously because this could fill a foreign policy gap that is greatly needed within our government. And it's in every way, I think, a good idea because it would incentivize American citizens to do our national foreign policy bidding with the right incentives, probably more so incentive-wise than if they were to just join the military. And it solves a much-needed problem in the United States, which is going to war with people that are very hard to go to war with because they're not formal governments. They're parallel organizational systems that quasi-run governments, but aren't necessarily linked like the cartels.